Hello, my name is Shane. Welcome to part 2 of my video on how to repair Pella in-window blinds such as these here. In this video, I'll explain in detail how to replace the ladder and drawstrings, including how to disassemble and reassemble the little string drum mechanisms in the top of the header bar up here. I've restrung 10 blinds and I made video recordings of the last 3. I combined these videos to give you the best view of the work. So there may be some small inconsistencies from scene to scene, but it does give you a pretty good idea of how to do the work. I recommend that you review part 1 if you are having trouble accessing and removing your Pella in-window blinds. So let's get started. Okay, so what are the tools and supplies required to do this restringing of your Venetian blinds? Well, for the first thing you need some ladder string here. This ladder string here to fit the Pella blinds. I bought this at a place called fixmyblinds.com. Fix My Blinds doesn't sponsor me, but they're the only place I could find the right size string for Pella shades. It's kind of pricey at $1 a foot, so make sure you do it right. So here you got that. You need, it depends on the size of your shade how much you need. I'll show you later how to figure that. You need some drawstring. I got this at Amazon. I got this as a 0.9 millimeter drawstring for $10, 100 yards at Amazon. Okay. You need popsicle sticks, 2 popsicle sticks, and 2 wood screws to go with your popsicle stick, and I'll explain later why you want those wood screws and popsicle sticks. Snap ties. You want at least 2 snap ties for each blind that you work on. A big needle. You want a needle that has a big enough eye in it that your drawstring cord can fit through it. This is a sailmaker's needle I happen to have. Weights. You want some weights for when you start assembling these to put some tension on your ladder strings so that they hang nice and straight. So I got some fishing weights here and I put some paper clamps on them. So you need 2 of those. Scissors, you need scissors. I'm just using nail scissors, which is fine. Any kind of scissors that are, as long as they're nice and sharp. They don't have to be big, don't have to be long. Little ones are better. A Sharpie marker, need that to mark some things out. Square nose pliers. You want something like this with a square nose on it, so if you do damage one of your Venetian blinds, that you can flatten them out where they're crimped. These are pretty handy. You want 2 pointy kitchen knives. Now they don't have to be sharp. Matter of fact, it's better if they're not sharp, because then you won't accidentally nick the string. But they do need to be pointy for when you take the little string drums apart. Forceps can be useful if you have really fat thumbs, but most of the time I don't need them. You need to have good light where you're working, and sometimes it helps to have a headband light so you can see better some of the details. Either that or you need a very well lit work area. You need some rubber bands. The rubber bands are for helping you act as a third hand when you take the little winch drums apart. And you need a step ladder, which I'm not going to show that yet, but you need a step ladder. And the last thing you need, you can't see it here, but you need a lot of patience. Consider that one of your tools. You're going to need it. Okay, before you start working on the blind, you need to set up a place to work. I like to work with a blind hanging, and the reason I like to work with a blind hanging is I make a lot less mistakes when I'm stringing the blind. I don't miss any rungs, and I have less tendency to miss the drawstrings going through the slat holes. It still happens sometimes. So what you need to do is find a place where you have a door that's not a lot of traffic. At least it can stay open or closed for a while, for a couple of hours. And what you want to do is take your popsicle sticks and drill a hole in one end, so you just have a screw that goes into the top of the door, and then a popsicle stick, and this is going to be your support bracket for the top header of the Venetian blind. And the nice thing about this is I actually put these up a couple years ago. You can fold them up, and then you can close the door. Here we are looking down at the top of the door, and as you can see, I just have a popsicle stick here with a single wood screw in it right here. And then I have a hole here that actually matches up with the hole in the bottom of the header bar, that usually is the snap-in hole for the end caps. I got one there and one here. So here's the step ladder that I use to do my work on the top end of the door. Some people will stand on a chair, but I prefer a step ladder because I think it's a lot safer. Okay, so now that you have the shades down, you need a nice flat place to work. Kitchen counter is good if the wife's outside doing gardening. So you need your 2 pointy knives, you need your Sharpie marker, a couple rubber bands, and a pair of scissors. So one of the things you want to do here is first you want to pop these ends off. You see here, here's the crank end, the little crank, and you see down here a button, you push that in, out comes the crank. Same thing for this end here. If you push this little button in here and take it out, that piece comes out. Set that aside. Now, you've got this off, and you can slide the casing off. And one of the first things that you want to do is you want to mark the end with the crank, so you don't get confused and remember later on. So this is the crank end. And by crank, I mean this little rotating device here that interlocks with the window, which has this slider that goes up and down the edge of the window that operates your shade. That's your crank side. Now, as you're looking at this, you see that there are a couple of things here. I'll go into these in detail later, but you have your 2 drawstring drums, and then hidden inside here is your ladder rung drum here and here, and then this is a brake. This is a spring brake, and it's all rotating on a single square cross-section rod. So the spring brake is made to work so that it's easy to rotate the rod to wind up the shade, but hard to turn it the other way so that the weight of the shade doesn't pull down and pull the shade back down. But it's not so hard that you can't overcome it with a little bit of force. Okay, so that's one thing to note. So we took out the header bar cover. Now we're going to take out this rod that goes through the drums. It just slides out the end. Okay, we already marked the end with the crank. And now we're going to go down to the bottom bar, the one at the very bottom here. And here you can see this little retainers. And you've got to be careful with these. You need to pull them out, but don't break them because you need them. You're going to need them. So take it out, and you will see that there is a loop of the drawstring that actually goes through this device. And you can cut that. Okay, save it. Same thing for the one on this end. You can pop it out. Cut that. Now sometimes these are a little bit different. They're almost the same except the one has a little plastic plug in it that makes it harder for this drawstring to go through it. I'm not sure why they do this. I find that it works better when you're reassembling it not to. You put that plug in there because it helps these to equalize. So I don't use them when I put them back in. Okay, so save these. And then, now that you've done that, go up to the header bar and cut off both strings. Alright, cut off the strings there, cut off the strings there. Okay, so I reshot this part here because I realized that I was showing something that was outside the camera's field of view. I'm new to this stuff. So once you get the square rod out, you want to look at your winch drums here. I call them the winch drums for the drawstring. You want to note the way that the string is wrapped around the winch drum. You want to put a mark on the winch drums so that you can see when you go back and rewrap the string, a new string in there, that you put the new string in there in the right direction. Because you can wrap it around the wrong way, and that causes some problems. So now you just take these out and you're going to remove the drums to take the drums apart. Now I will show you how to take the little winch apart here. If you look at this winch, you will see it's held in place by two brackets. One is a gray plastic bracket, and one is a white plastic bracket. The gray plastic bracket is locked in place. It's actually socketed here into the bottom of the header bar, so you can't move it. But the white one can be unlocked and removed. And I'm going to show you how to do that now. First, I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees so that my hands are not in the way of the camera. Then I'm going to install a rubber band to put some tension on the white bracket. After a while you get good at it and you don't need it, but it helps the first few times that you do it. And then I'm going to take these two pointy knives and put them in on each side of that white bracket. Compress the white bracket, push in from the sides with the knives, and there it is. You see it came apart. Now, this time I'll show you how to take this apart without the winch drum in the way. First, we'll put the two plastic pieces back together, and you will see how they snap together, like so. And now we're going to take it apart. As before, I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees so that I can get my hands out of the way. I'm going to take these two sharp knives, pointy knives, not sharp knives, put them in the side here, compress this, and there you can see we've released it. Have a look at the shades here. Now, all these slats are the same except that the first slat right here, you need to pay attention to this, cut the strings free from it. The first slat right here has a little plastic clip in it. And if you don't have those, what will happen is when you're trying to flip or flop this shade with your ladder rungs in normal operation, it won't work correctly because the very first one has got too much tension in it, because the two ladder sides of the ladder come to a point when they go through a hole in here, so they have a tendency to pinch the slat. So you need to have that spreader there. And sometimes they get a crack in them right here. They get a crack in them right here. And if that happens, you need to fix it with some super glue. Don't leave that crack unrepaired. So you've got two of these, and you have to have these for this thing to work right. So there's two of these right here. Okay. Okay, so now you have your slats. And what you need to do is, now you've cut the drawstring at the top and bottom. So now you can get, maybe, depends on the condition of your drawstring. Sometimes they're pretty bad condition. You can pull the drawstring through all the shades where they're lying in here. Be very careful not to force anything, because see, you can see the condition of this drawstring right here. Don't force anything because you don't want to bend any of these shades. You'll regret it if you do. Same thing goes for the other side here. Let's get that out of the way. Okay, let's pull this one out. Okay. I've now pulled all the drawstrings out, and the only thing that's keeping these shades together are the ladder rungs. The ladder rung string here. And then in my case, there are two ladder rungs here. So if you already have some loose ones, set them aside. Take the bottom one out here, which is the bottom bar. Okay, that's your bottom bar. Set that aside. And now, what you want to do is very carefully, slide the drawstring, not the drawstring, the ladder string off the ends of the slats. Take your time, don't go too fast. You don't want to bend anything. Okay, that's one string. Let's get the other. Okay, so we're doing pretty good. We managed to take all the slats, get them all taken apart without bending any. I want to make a few cautions, give you a few cautions about working with these slats. These slats are as delicate as flower petals. Believe me, they're very, very delicate. And they're very easy to bend, especially right at the drawstring holes. They'll bend. If you just look at them funny, they'll bend. Now if they do bend, you can straighten them out with the kink there. You can straighten it out with your pliers if you have some flat nose, square edge pliers. But they are never exactly the same. They're never as good as they were in the first place. So the best thing to do is just be very careful with these that you don't bend them. I would also suggest that if you do have to straighten any, set them aside and use them for the very bottom slats on the shade. Usually you don't look at those, or you don't see them, that they're not that obvious as the ones at mid-height or up at the top. So save the ones that you bent and straighten out for the bottom of the shade. Another thing is to resist the temptation to wash these. I find that generally speaking, these in-window blinds, which are sandwiched between two plates of glass, usually pretty clean. I'm a kind of a neatnik, and so the first one that I got that I took apart, I washed the slats. It was a big laborious process, and I bent several just by all the amount of handling that I did. So I found since then that actually they're pretty clean, and anything you can do to avoid excessive handling of these slats, it's the best. Another thing is you need every one of these parts, every one of these little parts, the little cranks, the little clips, the little white clips that go on the bottom of the bar. Every one of these things, you got to have them or this won't work. So keep track of them. Don't put them anywhere where somebody could step on them or lose them, because you're going to need every one of them. Now I'm going to cut the ladder string to length. It does cost $1 a foot, so you want to make sure you do it right. You want to have to start over again, so I do leave a little bit extra at each end. So the way to do this, to start at the top and go about five ladder rungs above the top of where the header bar would be, and then go down to the bottom. And I go usually about 4 to 6 inches below the bottom of the shade. And I'll cut it halfway between two ladder rungs. And then I will just double it to make sure that I cut the other one the same length. And there we have our ladder rungs cut to length. I prefer to do it directly off the window so I don't make a mistake using a measuring tape. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to cut the drawstring to length. Now the drawstring is actually continuous. It starts in a little winch drum up here that you saw before, comes down to the bottom, goes across the bottom bar, one piece, and comes up and goes up here and wraps around the winch a second time. So the way I do it, I give myself about, roughly 6 inches above the top of where the header bar would be. Going down to the bottom, plus a little more. Double it over. The string going the other direction. Oh, can't cut it yet. And then you got to add the width of the window. Add the width of the window for the string that goes across the bottom bar. And then you can cut it. Okay, now we got our strings cut. We can start to work. So now we're back at the workbench. And what we're going to do now is we're going to put the ladder strings on the winch drums and onto the header bar. So the first step that you want to take is you want to cut 4 of the ladder rungs. Leave the top ladder rung there, you got to have it, but you want to cut out 1, 2, 3, 4 of these. So take your little scissors, cut out 1, 2, 3, 4. And then do the same on the other side. Cut out 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right. Do the same for the other one. Let me show this up close for a minute. This is drawstring winding drum here, but this little part here is what the ladder run goes on, and the way it goes on, I have to pull it through the drawbar, through the top header bar. I'm going to show you is like that, and turn it over one more time. Do it like that, and once you got it in there, it's the motion of this rotating once this way or this way that tilts the blinds, the slats on the blinds. Okay, so what we're going to do, and you want to make sure you do both of them exactly the same way, because otherwise you'll have one twisting one way and the other twisting the other way. So what you want to do is get the two together, feed them through the bottom, get them out. Make sure you don't twist it so you know which side is which. Okay. Now you're going to put it in there. I'm going to twist it clockwise. 1, 2. Okay. Now that goes, oh, don't let it out. That goes into this end of the little winch drum, the gray bracket. Okay. And then you put temporarily put the little black cap on. It fits into a groove, and then put this on, but don't slide it all the way so that it snaps together. All right. Now we do the same for the other. And now you have it. So now we're going to go and hang it on the door and then start putting the slats back in. So now we're in front of the door. Here's our top header bar with the ladder strings in it. And you'll notice that the top header bar's got 2 holes in it. And these are the holes that we're locking in the end caps. I've got a matching hole drilled in the popsicle stick at each end, so I can put the ladder on top of the popsicle sticks. Now I switched to a GoPro camera so you can get a better view of this work. Because the other camera, I can't hold it and do the work at the same time. The shades I'm doing with the GoPro camera are a little bit narrower. So I had to move the popsicle stick over. Everything else is identical. So I'm fastening the header in place so I can do the work without losing anything. All right. The popsicle sticks, because they swivel, give you a little bit of latitude in making sure that the holes line up, the popsicle sticks with the header bar. So now we've got it hanging here, and we'll go to the next step. The next step is to take your fishing weights that you have here with a clamp on them, and clamp them on the bottom ladder rug. You want to clamp them on the bottom ladder rung so that the ladder stays spread out. So it hangs nice and straight. Same thing for the second one here. I do exact same thing. Okay. Now we're ready to put in the first slat. So now I'm going to show you how to put on the first slat. The first slat is a little bit tricky, and because it's not a good position to show it to you really, I'm going to use a little snippet of ladder string. So you get the ladder string on there, and what you want to do is you want to trap the ladder string between the slat and this little plastic piece. So you see here, the slat goes underneath the plastic, under the plastic piece goes underneath the ladder rung, and then when you take the slat, you put it in through the little slot there at the end, over the ladder rung and into the next slat. It's trapped in there, but it also provides a restraint on the slat so that the slat won't flip all the way over, because at the top there you've got that both of these go into one little hole here, so it tends to pull it really tight like that. The other slats don't have that problem, just the first one. Okay, so now I'm going to go back and install it on the hanging on the door hanger. So now I'm installing the first slat. The clip comes up from underneath, and then the slat goes over the top of the ladder rung, pinching it between the plastic piece and the blind. And this is only on the first one. Do the same thing on this side. And get it over. Okay. Now at this point you want to check your string on your drums. Make sure when you rotate the two drums by hand together in the same direction that the slat at each end rotates the same way, which it does in this case. That's good. So now we're going to set it at the horizontal position. And then we're going to feed in all the other slats. Okay, I've got all the slats in except for the last ones. Now, the last one is a bottom bar here, which you can see is stiffer, and the last slat goes on top of that bottom bar. They go in together. So, if you have a couple of these that are bent that you tweaked and you straightened and they still don't look quite right, put them down at the bottom. They won't be as noticeable. So this one goes in right here on the next ladder rung. You can see we have some excess ladder rung here, but don't worry, we'll trim that off later. Okay, so now we've got all the slats hung on the ladder string. We're going to run the drawstring through all the slats. And the drawstring starts at this end, goes down, across, and back up. And it's a little tricky at the beginning. You got to make sure that you put the put the drawstring through there, and make sure you don't wrap it around inadvertently around the drawstring. If you do, it'll get in a bind and it won't work when you get to the end. So again, you put this together, but do not snap the halves of the brackets together, because you need to put the drawstring in at the end. Okay, so now here we go. We're going to alternate the sides that we put the drawstring on the ladder rung. So we'll start with inside the ladder rung, outside, inside, outside, inside. Right? And I always like to terminate on an inside ladder rung, just because that way it's consistent. If I stop, I remember where I was. So here we go. Outside, inside, outside, inside, outside. Inside. Okay, so we've run the drawstring from the top to the bottom. Now we got to out the bottom hole here. Now we got to run it through this clip, because the string goes down through the clip and back up to the other side. So the very bottom slat is a cover for the bottom bar. If you're careful, you can peel it, get out of the way. Here we go. Get the ladder to the outside, then run this back up. And you got this guy trapped. We'll take care of the clipping off the ladder later. So we come over to this side. Put the ladder rung on the outside of the hole. Go down the hole. Okay. And then back up the hole. Get this piece. Over. There, like that. And back up in the hole like this. Snaps into place. And now we'll do the other side and run the drawstring back up the other side. So remember, the drawstring is not tied off at the top where we started, so we can still pull it out as we need some more. So we come up, to the first guy. Let's go inside. Inside, inside, outside, inside. Start. Okay, here we are. And we're just going to do the same thing all the way up to the top. Okay, so now we've got started with the drawstring at this end, went down to the bottom, came over, came up, and we have the last little bit to run through the hole here. Make sure that you don't wrap it around the ladder strings. Okay. So, now that we have the drawstring run up and down and across the bottom, we're going to connect it into the little winch drum right here. Now on this side, it's not too critical. First thing I'm going to do is tie a figure-8 knot in the end of the line. I'll show you how to do a figure-8 stopper knot with a bigger piece of line. Rotate the line this time one time, another time twice, and then take the bitter end and put it in through this loop. And there you have it, a figure-8 stopper knot. Okay, there's a knot. And we'll trim off the excess, leave about a 1/4 inch. So now you see the markings on the winch drum, and I'm going to wind the string around the winch drum about 3 or 4 times. 1, 2, 3, and just enough to get it into the little slot that's at the end of the drum here, the winch drum. Tuck it in there with a knot on the inside, and then put the little end piece, which has a slot, which has a ridge that matches the slot in the end of the drum. And then we're going to slide in the end piece and lock it in place. There. We don't have to be too precise because we make all the final adjustments on the other winch drum. So now we're going to install the drawstring around the other winch drum, and we need to get the length pretty close. So the first thing we do is take all the slack out of the whole system, which is fairly easy to do just by pulling on the string because you have the weights on the bottom. And remember that your drawstring goes all the way down to the bottom, goes across, and then comes back up. Okay, so what we're going to do here is put 4 wraps on it, on the winch drum with the string in the direction indicated by our markers. And we're going to mark where the string is going to go into the little slot with a Sharpie. Just a little dot right there. Okay, so now we got to take the end cap off. Take some of this string off the drum just so we have some string to work with. We'll wind it back on in a minute. Okay, so now we're going to tie a figure 8 knot right about where the Sharpie mark is. With a little practice, you can get this figure 8 knot to come out right where you want it. A little bit past the mark or right on the mark is good. Okay, now we know that it's in the right place. So we will next trim off the end of the string. And we'll wind the string around the drum. And tuck it in the drum at the little slot. Put the end cap on. Okay. All right. We got it. We look at this and we independently rotate the winch drums, but in the same direction. We can see that the blinds are working. That's good. That's what we want. So now that we have the drawstring installed up and down and wrapped around the winches, we can go ahead and put the square cross-section rod in and then check the operation of our blinds. So running it through the first little string drum, running it through the spring brake right here, running it through the second drum. Now we can see that if we rotate it one way, the blinds are closing. If we rotate it back the other way, the blinds are also closing. Any imbalance between the two strings will be adjusted once we run this thing up and down a couple of times. Now comes one of the parts I hate doing the most, which is trimming the ladder string off the bottom. Wouldn't seem like such a big deal, but tucking it away is the problem. So go ahead and take your weights off. You don't need those anymore. You put them away. And then look at your ladder string here and count 4 rungs. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cut it off at the 4th rung, or a little bit past. Now, you're going to tuck these ends into the bar here, but you don't want to get them to get tangled up with the drawstrings. So the main thing you want to do here is when you put these in, tuck them in this direction. So the drawstring goes in this direction. And that way you won't have a conflict. It's fussy work because you got that last slat right here, and you got to be careful not to bend it while you're wrestling with this string here. So pop this guy off. Now this guy has got the string going through him right there. You want to take this stuff and tuck it in Okay, so pull both ladder rungs evenly. You get them both in there. And pull them towards the outside of the bar, the outside direction, so they don't get crossed up with your drawstring. Push that in there. Okay, check to see that your drawstring is about even on the two sides of the ladder. No, the ladder rungs are about evenly spaced. Okay. Tuck that in. Tuck that in, like I said. Okay. Make sure it's hanging straight. Okay. And then you repeat that for the other side. Now that we got the bottom taken care of, we've come back to the top. What we're going to do is snip one of the tie wraps, but not the other. And then we're going to slide this on. This end is the crank end. See, it says crank right there. So we're going to put this on here. Be careful not to bend that first slat. Slide this over all the way to the end. Put this piece on this end. Here it's snap on. And now I'll have to cut this snap tie at this end so I can put the other piece on. You gotta be careful now because your header bar is just resting on top of those sticks. It's not prevented from falling off. Okay, see, it's snapped in the little pocket in the bottom. It's fitting on the top, it's ready to put back.